Good morning. Today is Wednesday, September 26th, and this is The Drill. Thank you very much. Thank you. This is Ron, your host, the only true conservative in the United States of America, because I'm the only one that makes the presumption for the status quo. So Bill Cosby yesterday was sentenced. He'd been convicted of it was an odd-sounding charge that he was up on. It wasn't rape, but it was some kind of sexual misconduct charge. I don't remember exactly what it was. But anyhow, he got 3 to 6, or was it 3 to 10 yesterday? But it was at least 3 years. I think it was 3 to 10. And so, meaning that he has to serve at least 3, and then after that he's eligible for parole. And then he'll stay, I guess, no more than 10 years. So he was convicted, and now he's been sentenced. And this is another demonstration of what it is that the left really doesn't want to happen. A lot of what was happening with Bill Cosby and what happens repeatedly from the left is that they really don't want, again, they can't show up to a cocktail party with blood on their hands. So the idea is to get people that they don't like or disagree with, or that they see as their political enemies or socio-political enemies, as Bill Cosby is seen, to destroy themselves. Put enough pressure on them so that they implode, and save you the hassle of having to put them on trial. Because now that Bill Cosby has been tried, convicted, and has been sentenced, the left has blood on its hands. You, in at least psychological terms, you can say that Bill Cosby has been, he is where he is because of the left, because of what the lawyer, I can't remember her name, and her clients, and her pushing this and going forward with it, despite the fact, and the reason I'm saying this is if these were issues that had come up or charges that were being made within the statute of limitations, because most of them weren't. There was allegations of rape, and that he had, given these women drugs, and then when they were unconscious, went ahead and raped them and whatnot, but not made within the statute of limitations. And so there's nothing there, and any decent attorney is going to tell that to a client. Hey, I'm sorry, but you're past the statute of limitations. There's nothing you can do about it. Gloria Allred, that's the person I'm thinking of, and she went forward with it anyway. She went and did news conferences, which seems to be her forte and her specialty, going ahead and having news conferences. And to do what? To put Mr. Cosby under pressure, and put him under as much pressure as possible so that she can ultimately hope to force a confession out of Mr. Cosby and get a conviction that way. And it didn't happen. He refused to confess. He fought this situation all the way, and maybe end up appealing his conviction on various grounds. But in the meantime, he's going to be doing his 3 to 6, and it's not the way the left, I think, really wanted it. They, again, wanted some kind of a confession. That's their version of, that's the way they do things in terms of morality. That's their morality, is confession. Also, that this is a potentially revolutionary situation where, because the whole idea was not just about, this wasn't about Bill Cosby alone. This wasn't about one lady or two ladies or several ladies against Bill Cosby, just like the Harvey Weinstein situation. It's not about several ladies against Harvey Weinstein. These have become now women's issues. We have the Me Too campaign that went along with the Harvey Weinstein situation, where women were encouraged to get on board, climb on the bandwagon, and proclaim that they had suffered at the hands of men, just the way the women had suffered at the hands of Harvey Weinstein. So it becomes a potential revolutionary issue, women being at the vanguard, and women leading the way for a socialist revolution, ushering in socialist paradise. From that standpoint, it was a failure, as it generally always is and always will be. Nobody really wants a revolution. Gloria Allred doesn't want one. No socialist wants one, because if nothing else, they know that property is power. And if you go ahead and get rid of property, which has to happen in a socialist paradise, then you have no power, and no socialist is willing to give up power. Yeah, it's also not going to happen for a whole bunch of other reasons. Nobody really wants it, like I said, but there's other things involved as well. But that's the primary one there. The socialists don't even really want a revolution. But there was, again, this was Gloria Allred trying to set up a women versus men dynamic, not just the victims of Bill Cosby versus Bill Cosby. So I'm going to be reading today from yesterday's episode of Rush Limbaugh. I got a transcript of that. And then it's going to be, I'm going to read from Philosophy According to House and Philosophy According to Breaking Bad. So when we come back. Thank you very much. So from yesterday, Rush Limbaugh, the Democrats didn't expect Kavanaugh to fight back. And I picked this because it echoes my monologue of just a minute ago. So, Rush, it gets more despicable. It gets more disgusting with the passing of each day. Judge Kavanaugh and his wife went on Fox News last night. I know there are different takes, different reactions to the interview that occurred. Martha McCallum with George Kavanaugh and his wife, but I'm just going to tell you, the fact that something like that even occurred with the subject matter that came up is itself despicable. It is just simply outrageous. It was uncomfortable to watch this. I knew exactly what was going on. And by the way, it served a great purpose. Forget whatever you thought of it. And I'm sure the reactions, the thoughts, the emotions to that run the gamut. But one thing that it did, I am a firm believer. Remember, we had the story yesterday that this loose cannon, Avenatti, who is the lawyer for the stripper, what's her name out there? Stormy Daniels. Yeah, Stormy Daniels. Oh, by the way, there's a link on the Drudge Report that says the judge in that case is ready to toss her lawsuit on Trump on the basis that Trump had every right to what he wanted to say. It can't be actionable and so forth. The judge hasn't thrown it out yet, but the story says that he's on the verge of doing it. But Avenatti, as we so disgustingly share with you yesterday, Avenatti said that within 48 hours he was going to produce a witness that would testify to the fact that Kavanaugh and his buddy Mark Judge got women drunk while in college. They got them drunk and gave them pills and started a rape train for their male buddies. He said he was going to produce this witness in 48 hours. He was demanding to be heard by the committee. He was demanding to testify and so forth. Today, his Twitter account is locked. I tell you what I think. I think much of what the left has been doing has been designed to get Kavanaugh to throw in the towel. Ding, 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 ding. I think they wanted Kavanaugh to quit, and I think they've been trying to get Trump to pull the nomination. So there's Kavanaugh and his wife last night on Fox saying, anyways, the basic bottom line on his interview with Fox was, I'm not going to resign. I'm not leaving. So I'm going to see this through. But there you go. Rush Limbaugh stumbles onto the truth. That's the absolute truth right there. The left doesn't want to see Kavanaugh lose a vote. They don't want him up for the vote and then see him lose the vote. What they want to see is that he is placed under a tremendous amount of pressure and that he then withdraws. Because when he withdraws, it's tantamount to a confession, and that confession then takes them off the hook, exonerates them, and everybody's happy. Now, why would they want that and not want to have Judge Kavanaugh you have the vote and have him voted down? Because there are those people that are supposedly pressuring various senators to vote no, various Republican senators, two in particular, Susan Collins and Barbara Murkowski. And so why wouldn't they want the vote and do it that way? Have a more objective basis, because you would think that would be more solid, that it would be harder to argue that Kavanaugh was not a worthy candidate if the Senate votes him down. But the reason they don't want it is, again, they don't want blood on their hands. It looks then as though the Democrats did something wrong, did something dirty, did something dastardly, and torpedoed. It can be said literally that they torpedoed his nomination. They don't want that. Also, and they don't want that also because, and they don't want to go through this voting down process because there's no power in it. To do that, to use a logical, reasonable process, is to deny power, is to pretend that life is not a power struggle, and is to acknowledge that life is basically about right and wrong, is to acknowledge reality, is it to acknowledge certainty, and to acknowledge universal rights and wrongs. And that's not part of their philosophy. It's not part of their attitude. I can say their philosophy, but their philosophical theory, let's put it that way. Their political philosophical theory is all based on that reality is individual, that there is no objectivity, and so whatever is real is what the majority says is real, and that life is really just a series of power struggles. And again, then confession becomes your morality. If you confess to something, then nobody can argue with that you're then guilty as charged if you confess. So, but again, Rush Limbaugh finally sees a little bit of the glimmer of the light here on that one. He's also seeing the glimmer of the light as to what a waste of time all of this is. And unfortunately, he doesn't learn from this. He doesn't go out and say, I'm not going to comment on arbitrary claims anymore. He doesn't realize and put one and one together that commenting on arbitrary claims is what lets people create more arbitrary claims. Okay, because if you're going to comment on one, then you got to comment on the other for the sake of integrity and credibility. And he needs to stop it. He needs to say, no, I'm not going to. He can mention a story, what's going on with Kavanaugh, that there's an accusation, but to say that it is an arbitrary allegation, that there is no evidence or proof to support it, and therefore it should be ignored. So when I come back, going to be the philosophy books, Breaking Bad and House. Thank you very much. And so I like these. There's a series of books. Actually, it's called House and Philosophy. Subtitle: Everybody Lies. And Breaking Bad and Philosophy: Better Living Through Chemistry. And I like it because it shows a link between philosophy and everyday life, philosophy at least, and the making of television shows, and in some cases movies. So where we were on this, oh darn it, that's right, I haven't. No. Well, we're not going to do this one. So what we're going to do is no Breaking Bad, but we will do House and Philosophy. So we're at Nietzsche. We're in the chapter where they're using comparing House to some of Nietzsche's attitudes and some of the things that Nietzsche had to say in his books. I don't want to refer to Nietzsche as a philosopher because he wasn't a philosopher. He was a philologist. He was a novelist. He wasn't declared a philosopher until after he died. And by the way, he died in an insane asylum after spending 10 years in an insane asylum. And one of his most famous quotes is, "That which does not destroy me makes me stronger." Well, no, it doesn't. That's crap. And we know it's crap by what happened to him. He spent 10 years in an insane asylum. It didn't make him stronger. It may not have killed him, but it damn sure didn't make him stronger. So it's one of the stupidest quotes ever, and one of the stupidest things Nietzsche ever had to say. So, but to the book. On one interpretation, the overman is valued in and for himself, not for what he may bring to the culture. Indeed, it is the culture that may form the soil for whatever the overman may become. On this note, Walter Kaufmann says, for Nietzsche, the overman is valuable in himself, and society is censured insofar as it insists on conformity and impedes his development. If this is not quite the circumstance of Dr. House, it certainly would seem to reflect the attitude of the viewer toward House, and perhaps even many of his colleagues who are attracted to House for who he is. His blunt and witty talk, his rebellious and humorous attitude toward the all-too serious hospital scene. In addition, there may be equally significant purpose to House's unique lifestyle. We, the viewers, may be asked to remember just what is important about doctoring and what is not, what is essential to the medical profession, and what is mere accessory. So, and then next is denial. Not to be confused with the aesthetic, Nietzsche's comments on the ascetic, the person who practices self-denial, are particularly surprising. One might think that the Nietzschean affirmation of bodily things would set him against the ascetic way of life. But Nietzsche offers the ascetic some small praise among his condemnations, something that seems to have come from Nietzsche's Asian influences. The self-imposed material restraints of the ascetic are really an attempt to preserve life, to fight for existence in a difficult and suffering world. So for Nietzsche, a world in which the human is a sickly animal, the ascetic ideal is an artifice for the preservation of life. You will see my point. This ascetic priest, this apparent enemy of life, is among the greatest conserving and, yes, creating forces of life. House, while not quite an ascetic, is almost never depicted as having or wanting the usual emblems of material success afforded to him by his profession. His motorcycle and jeans attest to his modest lifestyle. We don't see in House a conscious denial of consumer goods, only a lack of interest in them. And we see House, like the ascetic, as non-political, immune to the politics of the hospital and the medical profession. What we see of his surroundings is modest and simple without acquisitive habits. So, so far, again, in this House and philosophy, a lot of the analysis that's going on here is psychological, not philosophical. Philosophy, understood properly, are things intellectual, things rational, and most of what is going on here is we're talking about the imaginary, what it is that's going on in people's heads or hearts. And we don't know. This is not something that's displayed on the outside. It's not something that can be measured. As one psychologist once told me, because I asked the psychologist, I said, you know what's wrong with your profession is that you guys have cured nothing. Absolutely nothing. You know, you've been at it for decades or centuries, and you haven't cured a damn thing. When are you going to cure something? And the psychologist said, well, the reason we can't do it is because there really is no blood test for mental illness. So I think that says a whole lot. Anyways, when I come back, I fixed the problem with fixed a little issue. Actually, what I did was I had purchased or downloaded a sample of the book Breaking Bad and Philosophy. So I've actually gone ahead and purchased the book. So now I can continue with it, and I will when I come back. Welcome back. Thank you very much. And so where we left this off, Breaking Bad and Philosophy, was Walter's kill, his body count. That's what they call it. So he killed Crazy 8 and Emilio, and we got done with his killing Jane, who Jane was the girlfriend of Walter's former student. She was a heroin addict, and Jesse is the guy's name. So her and Jesse were blackmailing Walt, and so they're both high on heroin and sleeping. I don't know. He turns her over or something, or somehow she ends up on her back, and so then she vomits and chokes on her vomit. And instead of trying to save her, because he realizes if she dies, this blackmail situation goes right down the toilet. So he just lets her die. And so the question then was, how much culpability does he have for that, et cetera, et cetera. So now we move on to Aztec Speed Bumps 1 and 2. Walt saves Jesse once again in the episode Half Measures near the end of Season 3. Jesse's discovered that Gus Fring was behind the use of his new girlfriend's young brother's employment to kill Jesse's friend Combo, and Jesse plans to use the chemical ricin to kill Gus Fring. A dose of ricin as small as a few grains of salt can kill someone. Jesse's subtlety and sneakiness being what they are, non-existent, Jesse's threat to Gus becomes clear, and Gus orders Jesse's death. But Walt saves Jesse once again, if we assume that Walt saved Jesse's life by allowing Jane to die, ramming Jesse's would-be killers with his Aztec and shooting the one who survived the collision point blank. Walter's murders of Aztec Speed Bumps 1 and 2 are straightforward killings for which Walt is actively responsible. Unlike Emilio and Crazy 8, which were killings in self-defense, obviously self-defense with Emilio, arguably self-defense with Crazy 8, Walt wasn't threatened by the men he killed. Jesse was. The question is Walt's killing of those who threatened his friend justifiable or moral, or even morally praiseworthy? The duty to save might arise in the case of some sort of special relationship. Jesse and Walt have such a relationship, and in many ways, Walt is a surrogate father to Jesse, seemingly more attached and interested in Jesse's life than in that of his own son, Walt Jr. As a guide, teacher, sometime friend and partner to Jesse, Walt gives him direction, confidence, and skills he never would have acquired otherwise. True, Walt was involved in the death of Jesse's great love, Jane, but he has also helped him kick heroin, provided him training in cooking his famous blue meth, and watched his money and saved his life when it was threatened. Because of the special relationship and all it entails, Walt has taken on a special duty to protect Jesse, and his involvement first in preventing Jesse from trying to kill Gus, and then in saving Jesse when Gus's thugs were going to kill him. May have been morally justifiable due to this special relationship. Unlike the lack of active responsibility to intervene in saving strangers, we have heightened duties we owe to our friends, family, and others with whom we have certain special relationships, like Walt and Jesse's. While Jesse's is certainly not innocent, he was more so than was Gus or his hired henchman bent on killing Jesse. At this point, Jesse has killed no one, and his attempt to kill is perhaps somewhat morally justifiable as vengeance for his friend's death and to punish Gus for using an innocent child to do it. Weighing Walt's moral guilt in this instance involves a complex calculus. Is his killing of two non-innocents to prevent the death of another non-innocent justifiable? Jesse surely wouldn't have been in the position of weighing whether to murder Gus, but for Walt. So Walt's own actions and intentions are partly responsible for Jesse's intent to murder, and thus his targeting for murder. In a utilitarian calculus, if the total happiness is increased so that it outweighs the total amount of unhappiness from an action, the happiest result must be preferred, ethically speaking. Weighing Jesse's life against the lives of Gus's thugs, Walt's actions would be justifiable. Moreover, because Walt himself has helped create the situation Jesse is in, his saving Jesse is perhaps morally justifiable based on Walt's active responsibility and given their special relationship and Walt's relatively honorable intentions. So, the one thing I was thinking about as I'm reading all of this is my whole take on the series of Breaking Bad was that it was a really despicable show. It was one of those shows that, and there's a lot of them, that was very well done. There is a a prequel that's out now called Better Call Saul. And I find myself watching it and fascinated by it. But it's basically the same thing as Breaking Bad, except it just happens to center on the lawyer instead of centering around Walter White. So, but anyways, that in this particular show is disgusting. There's no good people. And I've addressed this before. There's no good people in Breaking Bad. Nobody. Everybody sucks to one degree or another. You know, I mean, when you're listening to all these complications about who killed who and who wanted who dead, and these are not good people. They're dealing meth. They're all dealing drugs. They're all out to try to kill one another, kill each other, kill other people. The only person in there that was, and you can't even really say they were morally good, was the baby. Walter White and his wife had a baby recently, and the baby was, maybe 6 months old. So that's the only one that was beyond moral scrutiny. Maybe his son, who has cerebral palsy, perhaps, but even he wasn't a very likable character. He came across as being kind of snotty and overly concerned with his own, with himself, and oblivious pretty much to everybody else, it seems. But like I said, everybody else in this whole series were ugly people. They were all ugly people doing ugly things. And really, if philosophy or Breaking Bad and philosophy, the people are writing this or editing it, however you want to say it, would have been better off by analyzing that. The idea of creating this crap and foisting it on the public, and the idea that doing it, and they do it, and they don't do it in an offhand way. They don't make a crappy movie, but they make a movie about crappy people. Very well made, absolutely excellently acted, brilliant technical qualities, camera work, the scripting, the story, brilliant. Absolutely fantastic. But it's still, in the end, a story about crappy people. So, and I think they would have been better off analyzing that, because philosophy is meant to be the broadest. You're looking at issues from the broadest possible perspectives. Morality, as in universal. That's the first issue and ultimate issue of morality and ethics is, are there universal rights and wrongs? Universal. That means that rights and wrongs that will apply to everybody, everywhere, for all time. And yes, there is. So to answer that question. But those would have been the issues that this series should have brought up. What he's getting this, because again, they have a different author or different author for each chapter. One author comes in and does a Machiavelli bit, another one does another philosopher and how that philosopher affects this part of the story, et cetera, and do the overall have one person that does an overall analysis of the whole show and its effect in terms of its reflection on metaphysical reality. One of the issues of metaphysical reality is there a metaphysical reality, or is life subjective? Is consciousness primary, or is existence primary? And which way does this show go? A malevolent universe premise versus a benevolent universe premise. Which way does the show go? I say, obviously, this is a show that is promoting a malevolent universe premise. And again, we know that because everybody in this, all the characters in this series suck. They all suck. And that's what the author of all this is trying to say. It's a shitty universe, a shitty world. Albuquerque, New Mexico is a shitty little city in a shitty country in a shitty world in a shitty universe. And there's nothing you can do except hope to die in your sleep. So, anyhow, when I come back, we're going to do a couple of jokes from the New York City Cab Drivers Joke Book. Thank you very much. And let's see where we're at here. There we go. Jazz musician's 6-year-old son is plucking the petals from a daisy one by one, saying, "She digs me, got no eyes. Digs me, got no eyes." 2 Polish men rent a rowboat and go fishing in a lake. They're catching fish after fish and have almost 24 by the end of the afternoon. One man says to the other, "Why don't we come back to the very same place tomorrow?" "Good idea," his friend answers. So the first man takes a piece of chalk and draws an X on the bottom of the boat. "Don't be stupid," the friend says. "How do you know that we'll be in the same boat tomorrow?" Polish guy's out hunting in the wood. Suddenly he comes upon a clearing, and there before his eyes is a beautiful, totally naked woman. She looks at him seductively and says, "I'm game." So he shoots her. And on that note, we come to the conclusion of another episode of The Drill. And until next time, thank you very much for joining me, and have a great day.